potentially.
Yeah, I think in the cemetery, what I heard, there was only one grave marker, and that whole cemetery had a name, and it happened to be one of the doctors that died and somehow was buried there, and he had a blue colored headstone. The rest of them are not even headstones. They're like, plates or whatever on the ground with numbers.
Yeah, right. And then what if one of them evil doctors that worked there died, and then he's still there, still harassing the patients in death? I mean, it's all kind of thought-provoking things that could go on there.
Oh, yeah. And the reason why I mentioned about women with menopause, because actually it's been documented back around that time frame. If a woman, they kind of get emotional. Some women get emotional. Some women don't, But back then, all of a sudden, if a woman started getting emotional and the husband is kind of like tired of her anyway, the first thing he does, he goes up and they commit her. Right,
especially if they had a little bit of money. It was different times back then. If you had a little bit of money and the husband said, "Hey, she needs to be committed," she may never leave there again, except maybe in a coffin or in the furnace.
Yeah, that's so scary. I mean, just think about that. This is how the people were tortured and all that. I think that, in our country, going back to the 1800s. Even up to the early 1900s and stuff, and even later than that, how they didn't know how a person's brain functioned. They didn't have medication. So you know what? If a guy showed a little bit of anger now and then, or not even anger, maybe he was outspoken or didn't follow the rules. How many people were committed in a mental institution back then that actually had absolutely nothing wrong with them in today's society standards?
Exactly. There's an old saying I say once in a while, and it goes like this. One time, people that were seen dancing were thought to be insane by the people who couldn't hear the music.
Oh, yeah. And people like with your gift, okay, at being a medium and seeing spirits and hearing spirits, I mean, I hate to say it, you would have been locked up till you died, and actually, you wouldn't have lived that long in one of those places. No one did.
Listen, not even that long ago, I grew up with that. I put that stuff on the shelf for a long. I grew up in small town Ohio, so I put that stuff to the side for as many years as I could until it came to a boiling point, and I either had to sink or swim with it. So, now I don't care. But things have changed a lot in the last 30, 40 years. It's different now than it was back. It's more acceptable, so to speak, than it was 30, 40 years ago. I
think it's more acceptable in probably the last 15 years because of the internet.
Yeah.
People are more aware
absolutely.
of it.
Yep.
And
I agree.
I had a lady on my show who late in life became she was gifted. Her and her husband were in a car. He got T-boned, and he died right there in front of her. And she never had any psychic abilities before that. But, while she was in the hospital, her husband would, didn't realize he was dead, would come and visit her while in her bed at the hospital. And it got interesting. And from there, her psychic abilities kept growing and growing and growing and hasn't stopped. So, I mean, I don't think a person has to even be born with it. I think it maybe trauma or anything like that can unleash these abilities. I don't know how you feel about it.
I think we all have the abilities, just like, here's the best way I can put it. We all have the abilities, just like we all can play basketball, but we all can't be Michael Jordan. Some of us have a little more talent than others, and then there's life experiences that can trigger things like you open your third eye or really amp your abilities to the surface, like near-death experiences and things like that, I have found can really bring it out to the surface. And it sounds like that's what happened to her. She had a near-death experience, and coincide with her abilities she already might have had, and her husband died, and it just brought things to the surface, and now she has what she has, abilities.
Well, I think
more so than she did.
I think we all have some type of limited. I know I've mentioned this on my show here recently, but when I was in junior high school, me and my best friend, he used to come over at my parents' house because my parents had a nice colored TV. They had a black and white. So we'd watch, on the weekends, we'd watch these horror movies, like zombies. What do you call these where they do make zombies on those islands. Voodoo, yeah, voodoo. And we watched this one voodoo movie, right? And we had this one teacher in junior high school we hated so very much, if you ever could realize. And you know what we did? The next morning, we walked, a few miles to a place called White Center. That's in Seattle. And there was a magic shop there. And they sold, voodoo stuff. And I bought a voodoo doll. And so me and my friend Terry, we go home and we figured, we're going to get even with Mr. Bender. I can say that now. Unless he's one of these people who can live to 100, he's gone. So I'll say it. And maybe his spirit's still looking at me yet. But anyway, we took found these sewing needles my mom had. She had some big long ones. So I started sticking it in the stomach of the voodoo doll, and we said whatever we could remember from the movie. It was some probably gibberish, right?
Good God.
Well, yeah, okay, that was like on a Sunday. So we go to school on Monday, and he taught math. So we go up to the portable. We go in. He was in the same class with me, and we had a substitute teacher. So we go, this is strange. And we asked the substitute teacher, well, where's Mr. Bender? Oh, he's in the hospital. He had appendicitis. and on Sunday he had appendicitis. Sunday we were sticking needles in this doll in the stomach, saying, I won't say what we were saying.
I got to ask, how old were you at the time?
Well, in junior high, I would have had to been about
12, 13, 14, something.
Yeah, about maybe 13 kind of rings a bell, something like that.
So what'd you do with your allowance? Oh, went and bought a voodoo doll. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, and then what was really bad, we hid it in the closet in the hallway, and my mom found it, and, she saw this weird-looking doll thing with her sewing needles in it.
Your anxiety level must have been through the roof once you found out your teacher had some problems after that.
Well, it goes even farther than that. Okay, so, he gets out of the hospital, he comes back, a couple weeks later. He's a big jerk, like always, right? He had this old Plymouth, like a 49 or 50, maybe 50 Plymouth, that he loved that more than he loved his wife, because his wife evidently left him. And he had this thing repainted, all new upholstery. The guy was a total jerk. I mean, he was mean to me. He was mean to my friend for no reason at all. Okay, maybe we weren't the best students in the classroom, okay, like paying attention and turning our work in. But the guy treated us like really bad. So me and my friend, we're 13 years old. We're kind of naive in life. In my dad's shop, he had this paint remover, but it wasn't regular paint remover. It was aircraft paint remover, the real good paint remover. So
it was a good.
So here's Mr. Bender. All he would do in his class is, like I said, he would make us stand against the wall. He would embarrass us. I couldn't take it anymore, and it's past the statute of limitations. I'm sure by now.
You checked it out before the story.
Me and Terry decided we're going to put this paint remover on his car. So I think we put it on the roof of his car. It did a good job. It took the paint off right down till you could see the bare metal. Well,
I bet it did.
My friend had a big mouth, so he thought it was really funny, so he had to tell his friends, hey, guess what we did at lunchtime?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
He went bragging.
Yeah, so the teacher actually took me out of the class, in the middle of the class, like the next day, and started beating me up. Beating me up, seriously. And this is back, early 60s, mid 60s, before I went in the service. So I go up to the office, right? They wouldn't do anything about it. I said, hey, I just got beat up by the, and the principal looked at me and goes, well, maybe you deserved it. Hey, what can I say back? They what can I say? So,
I know times have changed. Listen, even when I was in school, when I was in junior high, we had a teacher. He'd be talking real soft, and somebody would be talking. He would just on a dime, flip out, pick you up, and just start wailing on you. I mean, beating you up, slamming you against the wall. I mean, incredible. If you did that stuff today, you'd have lawsuits. But the stuff I've seen even when I was in school, man, teachers break the boards on you, beat you to death, throw you around,
whip you with a belt. You know,
I used to live 5-6 miles out of town. I used to ride a bus for an hour to get home out in the country in the sticks, and we had a substitute bus driver, and somebody hit him with a spitball. He stops the bus literally in the middle of Bigfoot country and makes us all get out and walk home. 5 miles from in the middle of nowhere. If you did that today, it'd be all over the news.
Yeah, and he'd be locked up and fired.
Yeah.
Well,
that was common, you know.
Well, here's the other thing, okay? So after this happens, right, I had this, like, weird dream. And I documented it at the time because the next morning I told my mom about the dream. I said, you know what? Mr. Bender is he's going to get what's coming to him. And my mom goes, what? I said, I had this dream last night that as he's coming to work, they had the special place for the teachers to park, but before you got to there was the junior high school also was next to high school, and they had their football stadium down there. But it was like about a 75-foot bank from the road down to where the track was and the football field. Right. I had a dream that he went flying off on it. And crashed his car 75 feet below.
Oh, my.
I told my mom all this, and my mom says, hey, is this a dream? Forget about it. Guess what happened? That was like on a weekend. Again, Monday, okay, here's all the police cars, here's the ambulances and all this stuff. And, I think he broke a couple bones. He was lucky. But he somehow went off the road, and he ended up down that 75, going over that bank, 75 feet, hitting down the bottom and smashing his car up and totaled it.
That is a total premonition dream right there, man. I'll tell you, that guy's durable. My goodness, he survived a voodoo attack and all kind of stuff. Gee, many Christmas.
Yeah, well, I wasn't in his class anymore after that. And be honest with you, when he came back, he was so sickening nice to me. Seriously. I mean, he would say, hi, Gary, how's everything going? And all that stuff. I mean, he went to the point of being really nice to me.
Maybe he had a premonition, a dream that saw you behind everything and thought, you know what, maybe I ought to just be a little nicer to him.
Well, maybe. So I'm just saying, I think people do have things in their life.
Yeah.
I've never had any of that happen ever since, and thank God. I could not do what you do. I could not handle, ghost or anything like that, or, spirits coming and communicating with me. I just don't think I could handle it emotionally. I'm not that type of person. Doing a talk show is enough for me, believe me.
Listen, it all came to a reboil just a couple of years ago. You may see me on a show here this fall, actually. But, I had to learn to get grip with it, man. I had a lot going on in my life. It opened up my third eye. And it's funny you mentioned there's a cemetery literally less than 100 yards behind my house, and all these spirits were coming in my house, poking me, wouldn't let me sleep.
Any of them
my toilet paper around and everything.
None of them asking you for a cigar or a cigarette or a beer?
Nope. They just kept poking me, wouldn't let me sleep.
We only got like 3 minutes, but as you know, my dog of 20 years, my part poodle terrier. Yeah. It's really weird. It's not happened before this, but what's been going on? I told my wife about this the other night. In fact, last night I told her this. He used to sleep down by my feet. He was a small dog. But as soon as he knew we were asleep, all of a sudden he would creep up a foot, then he'd creep up another foot, then he'd creep up. Next thing you know, he would have his head on my pillow next to me, snoring away. And that has been going on for years, right? I what's been interesting is I told my wife, I said, I'll be laying in bed half awake or listening to, replays of some talk show. I won't say which one. But I would all of a sudden feel like, how the springs of the bed,